In 2016, I was watching the news. The first full week in July, there were 4 officer-involved shootings of African Americans and Latinos. By the end of the week, 5 police officers were shot dead in Dallas, and it was just crushing. So my wife and I worshiped at Mount Zion.
As senior pastor of Mount Zion, there was a lot of tension in the air, and my fear was what was happening in Dallas, what was happening in Ferguson, that if we didn't come together as a city, it could happen here. The church should be that place that brings people together.
The worship was lovely, and then the preacher got up to preach, and you could tell he was filled with emotion in this moment as well. The kind of sermon where it felt like this preacher was speaking directly to me.
A lot of what I was saying was a reverberation of what Dr. King had said 50 years ago, that there are systems that works against unity. There's a systemic issue in our society.
We stood in line, and Pastor Aaron introduced himself, and we came, and I said, I'm the pastor at University Presbyterian Church, and thank you so much for your message. And he said immediately, let's have lunch together.
I felt a sense of God orchestrating something, because I had been praying for that, and God said, here's the answer.
I think we both immediately felt how much we had in common. And not only our common faith in Christ, but our concern for our city, and that there would be other pastors who would share this. Well, as it happened, UPC has had a partnership relationship with Evangelical Chinese Church.
I believe God lead us together, because before that, for many years, I feel like I was a guest. I didn't pay a lot of attention for the racial issue. When Pastor George brought up the vision, I was very touched about that.
George introduced me to Pastor Alex, and he and I began to just talk about ministry in general.
I told him by that time, almost 20 years I have been in the United States. I never got a chance to make friend with a black person.
He said, I've been in the United States of America for quite some time, and I don't have a black friend, and I feel embarrassed about that.
And Aaron stand up. I stand up too. He hugged me. He said, brother, you have it now. You have one now. I was very touched.
I say, we are brothers from another mother. And we just both just laughed. And I told George, you're the same. We're brothers now. We're kindred brothers.
We didn't really know where we were going. All we could say was, this is Jesus's vision for the church. He wants us to engage with him and with one another. And he'll lead us.
We knew that we had to bring other people into it, our leaders. And the first thing we said is that we need to pray. We need to bathe this thing in prayer.
One of these prayer gatherings, everybody went back to the back walls, and we just tried to squeeze into this grand circle. And that prayer was so heartfelt. You could sense this hush in the room, and we all looked up, and there were just smiles on our face. We knew we were in the presence of Jesus, holding each other's hands. We didn't want to let go, and we were just looking at each other's eyes going, this is what we've been praying for.
The conception of Kindred was born out of wanting to model the multi-ethnic family of God. As it is in heaven, so shall it be on earth. And if the world really wants to know what heaven looks like, then they ought to be able to look at the church and say, oh, that's what heaven looks like.
It's not simply put 3 churches in one place. It doesn't mean we eventually will grow the 3 churches, we merge as one church. It's a deeper meaning as a Christian. What does mean God's church?
And we came up with these different dimensions of worship and pulpit exchanges, prayer, small group gatherings, and these forums and service projects. And Pastor Aaron said, we're not called just to make an impression. We're called to make an impact. Well, we knew from the beginning that Kindred wasn't our project. It was Jesus's project. It is Jesus's project. Sometimes there are challenges and disappointments. We faced one of those when Pastor Aaron went through a leadership transition at Mount Zion, and that required them to step back for a season. And we were asking ourselves, so what do we do? And it was the pastors from Evangelical Chinese Church who said, we can't do this without an African American church.
Because the African American church is very important for this vision, so we have to have another black church to involve.
You know, I remember praying and asking God, Lord, what church would you have to be a part of this? Pastor Broughton and I had known each other at that time, for about 9 years. And he said, this invitation couldn't have come at a better time because Damascus was changing its name to Damascus International Fellowship.
You know, leading up to Kindred, I had already started really looking at cross-cultural, multicultural relationships. And so we had already started in our church and understood that that was part of our DNA. And so I saw that in as God now just really bringing us together to say, this is your next step.
I am quite sure that one of the most memorable experiences of worship I will have ever had was a moment where Kindred gathered for worship. We had gospel choir on the chancel, liturgical dancers in the aisles. Our choir moved out into the aisles and sang. Most poignantly, we had a foot washing ceremony.
That's a big impact to my life. I was with Pastor Aaron. After we washed the feet for each other and we hugged together, it's a sincerely hug. By that point, I really want to hug my brother. By that time, it's a great impact for relationship, for the brotherhood, the friendship, and also the servanthood. That's a really special experience to me.
Because there was something powerful about that, because Jesus did it for his disciples. And then he told his disciples to do it for one another. And so we were modeling what Jesus was doing for his disciples. That brought tears to my eyes.
The sense of unity, the sense of intimacy was there, you know. And then when we went to eat and we were at the table together and having ethnic dishes and talking and enjoying one another, that to me was the highlight.
Well, you know, the challenge was we had already made plans to do Kindred, and then the pandemic hit.
Our world was rocked, right? Everything was turned upside down, and God reminded us that he was in charge.
I remember Pastor Alex saying we need to go deeper, and it may not look the way it looked last year, but let's try to do this thing virtually. And it wasn't ideal, but really strengthened relationships. God began to even make his presence known, even in the middle of all of that.
For me, it's more like Acts, where you see Jesus moving away from the temple, right? From the formality of the institution, you know, and I think that's what the pandemic has taught us.
In the very beginning, we used a lot the term Kindred Project. And then later on, all of us realized that it's not just the project. Actually, it's a vision, it's a movement.
We don't know what that will look like in the future, but we couldn't be more excited than to find out.
God is moving us closer to him. And so I just want to encourage my Kindred brothers and sisters, let's stay the course until Jesus comes back.